Hello everyone, welcome to Inconvenient Truths and also perhaps to a whole new world. I'm your host, Jennifer Zheng. What do I mean by a whole new world? Well, I hope that I can explain this clearly after I share what I saw on January 6 in Washington, D.C., as well as some of my thoughts about what this day means to us. You might have already seen the short clips I shot on January 6 in Washington, D.C. My schedule on that day was a little crazy. I got up at 1 a.m., shot my first clip at home before I went out, shot my second one at about 1:40 a.m. at the parking lot where I was going to board the bus to D.C. I arrived at Washington, D.C. at around 7 o'clock in the morning, only to find that YouTube didn't allow me to do live streaming after they took down the video of the CCP expert Di Dongsheng's speech that I translated. So I had to shoot short clips and then upload them as quickly as I could. So I had been shooting, uploading until about 4:15 p.m. in the afternoon when I was forced to leave Washington, D.C. ahead of schedule. I shot my last video on my way back at around 5:30 p.m. in total darkness, as there was no light at all on the bus. So I gave that 3-minute video the title, My Closing Remarks on This Wild Day in the Dark. Basically, the majority of the clips I shot were from the morning before and when President Trump made his speech. When I was standing and shooting there, what I felt was a party or festival atmosphere. People were happy, passionate, hopeful, and peaceful. They cheered when President Trump and other speakers spoke. There were also several regular guys who said they had had enough and didn't want just to go home and take it. I left the party around 1 p.m. for the second time while President Trump was still speaking to upload my video, as there was no signal at the venue. I went to the National Press Club building, which is very close to the White House, and also to the stage where President Trump was giving the speech. I used to be a member of the National Press Club. It was about 2:30 p.m. when I was done with the uploading as well as my lunch. I started walking to Capitol Hill along Pennsylvania Avenue. I was astonished to learn the news on my way that someone got shot inside the Capitol. Then I started seeing people coming towards me from the Capitol Hill. Police sirens went off loud and harsh, giving a very terrifying feeling. I took some clips of people walking towards me. I didn't know whether they left by themselves or were driven away by the police. When I was approaching Capitol Hill, I got a text message and was told that our bus would leave earlier as the police were blocking the roads. The boarding place had also been changed, so I needed to get there immediately. After reading the message, I walked to Independence Avenue on 4th Street. When I passed by the west lawn of Capitol Hill, I could see there were still thousands of people there, so I stopped for a minute and shot a short video. I could also see and hear a helicopter hovering around in the sky. After shooting 2 clips, I quickly left, and I had no time to stay and watch. When I arrived at the boarding spot on Independence Avenue, a lot of police cars rushed by with harsh sirens going off. The road was blocked and the atmosphere was very intense and terrifying. Thus, I left at around 4:15 p.m., about 15 minutes ahead of time, and finished the crazy day in Washington, D.C. Overall, what I saw in the morning near the White House and Washington Monument was peaceful and orderly. It was just like any other normal gathering I attended before. I didn't personally see and experience how, when, and why things went wrong at Capitol Hill in the afternoon, but I've seen enough videos shot and shared by others to make a basic judgment. I don't want to show those videos here, as I don't want this show of mine to be deleted by YouTube. President Trump's lawyer Rudy Giuliani used a lot of such clips in his show, and that show was deleted by YouTube. So I don't want the same thing happen to me. But let me tell you what happened on April 25, 1999 in Beijing. In early April that year, a magazine in Tianjin City published an article to attack Falun Gong, a peaceful spiritual practice which had attracted 70 to 100 million practitioners by then, and that number was larger than the CCP membership figures. In other words, there were more Falun Gong practitioners than the CCP members by then. So, after that article was published, Falun Gong practitioners went to the magazine's office peacefully to tell the editors the truth about Falun Gong, but they were attacked and arrested by the police. When other Falun Gong practitioners asked the police to release the arrested Falun Gong practitioners, the police told them that this was a national issue and asked them to go to Beijing to appeal to the central government. So, early morning on April 25th, when many Falun Gong practitioners from Tianjin as well as from Beijing and other places arrived at the State Appeals Office at Zhongnanhai, where the central government compound is located, police officers were waiting them and telling them where to go and where to stand. With over 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners arriving gradually, they eventually found themselves surrounding Zhongnanhai. It only became obvious to them later that it was a setup by the police, and I happened to be one of the 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners standing on the street that day. However, nothing violent happened on that day, as Falun Gong practitioners were always very peaceful people. We stood on the streets for a whole day and left quietly in the night after we heard that the arrested Falun Gong practitioners were released. However, about 3 months later, the CCP suddenly launched an overwhelming crackdown on Falun Gong. Besieging Zhongnanhai was the biggest justification for the crackdown, which started from an all-out media campaign to demonize Falun Gong and its practitioners. To date, the persecution of Falun Gong has lasted for more than 21 years, with tens of millions once imprisoned, including myself, thousands being confirmed to have been tortured to death, and possibly millions have been murdered for their organs. And all this started with a setup, a so-called besieging Zhongnanhai. Sounds familiar? Other similar incidences include the Reichstag fire in Germany in 1933 and what happened during the anti-extradition bill protests in Hong Kong in 2019. On July 1st, 2019, after some people were allowed inside the Legislative Council building, the protest as a whole was quickly labeled as riot, and all the 2 million protesters who once took to the street peacefully were labeled as rioters, mobs, etc. There were also reports that thugs were hired to create chaos so that blame could be put on the protesters. And then the CCP's crackdown looked more legitimate and intensified. Then, in less than 1 year, a much harsher national security law was imposed on Hong Kong in June 2020, marking the formal death of Hong Kong's freedom. Just several days ago, 53 pro-democracy lawmakers were arrested in Hong Kong. Because I was one of the 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners who were said to have besieged Zhongnanhai, because I personally suffered terribly the consequences of the so-called besieging Zhongnanhai, and because I have followed closely what happened in Hong Kong. When I heard the term routers, mobs were used again in the US, I felt something very ominous. And then, in the following days, we saw deletion and suspension of social media accounts by Twitter and Facebook, as well as the complete blackout of Parler, thanks to the concerted work of Google, Apple, and Amazon. What do all this mean to America and to the world? This morning, I sent this tweet. I heard 1984 has become the most hot-selling book now. Apart from 1984, a fiction, you should also read my book, non-fiction, autobiography most recent, if you haven't. I was imprisoned and tortured in China after the CCP's internet police interrupting an email. The content was a letter I wrote to my in-laws to explain why I chose to continue to practice Falun Gong even after the CCP decided to crack down on it. The crime I was given was using the internet to incite resistance to the implementation of national laws. This may sound like a joke to Americans just a few months ago. Now, you really need to think hard and think twice. Well, that's what I tweeted. Would you agree with what I said? What do all this mean to America and the world? I will do another show to discuss this in more detail next time. In such a critical time, the price of telling some truth is high, so I need your support and help even more. Please do subscribe to my channel, like, share my videos, and tell us what you think if you could. Thank you. See you soon.